and welcome to my studio. I have a little project share here today. I treated myself to a class by Roxanne Evans Stout through the Jean Oliver Network, and it was called The Bookmaker. And I thought it was just an intriguing class. Roxanne had taken a 10 and made it into a book, and I just thought it would be a fun self-study course and stretch myself a little bit to maybe do some different techniques and things. And I really love this class. So this is what I ended up making. I took Roxanne's basic idea and then twisted it to make it my own. So this little book is 4 by almost 5.5, and it's almost an inch and a half at the gap. It's got a little gap here, a little bit of a gator mouth on the side there, just because my inside's got a little fluffy. But I did not have a 10. So what I did with this project is I took some sheet metal and made myself a template, and used some metal shears and a rivet gun, and I sanded all the rough edges, and I made myself a 10 base. I did not make a 10 lid. I used some antique books from the 1800s that I had. They were just front covers. There was actually no book. They were just covers, and made myself my own cover design for my book. So following her directions for the collaging and the papers and the layering on the inside, and then, like I said, just kind of planning it and making it my own. So let me widen out just a little bit, because I think I'm going to move around and get it off screen too much. So my book is bound with this vintage ribbon, and I've got some little hand beading on the side, a little boho paper clip with beading, and some of the pieces that were special to me. This is a metal piece that I made, and let me kind of undo the leather out of my little clippy system here so we can look at the top better. There. As I mentioned, I did these are 2 layers of vintage books. This is a piece of a vintage book spine. This is a piece of metal that I made and used some patina on it. I rusted these tacks, and this is a vintage, these are pieces, and I think the rest of the pieces are inside the book, of a vintage dog collar. It was a collar I found at my grandmother's. It belonged to one of my uncle's hunting dogs, and it was laying on the floor of an old barn, and it was pretty much falling apart. I mean, the leather was so old, and it was just really falling apart. So I tried to condition it, but parts of it just fell off and disintegrated. So I ended up gluing it to a fabric strip on the back of the pieces that I could salvage, and use it as decoration for part of my binding. And this was when I first started doing metal work. This was one of my first pieces I made, and I never used it, so I thought, I'm going to use that now. Excuse me, I'm going to pull out my stool and sit down here. And then this is also a piece of an old book this is actually a McGuffey reader from the late early 1900s, I'm not sure. Just did some wire work, some bead work, collage. There's collage all the way around the book, And on the back, some old vintage papers and document papers and things like that. So let's go in and explore. Oh, and this is my clip. I don't know what this closure is. It's some kind of a weird clip. I actually found this on the ground, and it just literally clips on there, and I just wound my leather through it to tie it. So this book is entitled Metamorphose, and it is about change and growth. I think that's all I want to explain about it, because this has a personal meaning to me. So, and this is a book that will stay in my personal collection, just because I did use pieces of fabrics and different things. Like this little swivel thing was something I got out of my husband's fishing stuff, and like I said, this was from my uncle, and different little pieces and parts have specific meaning to me. But this is the opening of the book, and you can see it's the imagery I used in here were moths and butterflies. Here's some more pieces of the dog collar and some more interior book spines, some cheesecloth. This is some vintage velvet, and this is wire, I don't know if you would call it embroidery stitch or whatever. It's just really old. And I thought it reminded me of sort of a broken butterfly wing. And I chose the lace under here because of the pattern of it. It again reminds me of wings. And when you lift this, there is a vintage piece of a bifocal, an actual glass. And there is a real butterfly wing encased in there. Now, I'm not a butterfly killer. Anything I ever use like this has naturally expired, and I've just found it. This one, the blue had faded quite a bit off of there. So I had some metallic kind of bluey paint, and I did brush over that just slightly to bring that blue back out, because it had, you know, gone in there so much. And this is some hand-dyed stained stamped paper. And so there is one of my little pages. This is the second page. And these are, each page in this book is meant to be like a standalone little collage. So I might not necessarily, which these do, this does coordinate, because unfortunately for me, I cannot get away from my matchy-matchiness. I try, but it just doesn't work. This is some more of the McGuffey Reader book here. Just some vintage lace and things. This was a little thing that I found in a, there was a little box of things, and this was from my uncle from the farm. This was some wallpaper. This is vintage wallpaper and some vintage silk, vintage lace, things like that. This wallpaper is almost identical to some that my great Aunt Sylvie had in her kitchen at one time. And so that reminds me of her. And so I wanted to use that. And here's another page. I have done, there's some eco-dyed fabric on here, and some other hand-dyed fabric, and a butterfly again, and just some really fun layers and wiring. And when you lift this up, there's a sketch that I did. Oops. This is a hand-done sketch of a moth. And so here is another page. This page, this is where the book gets hinky. It's hard to open. I'll try to do it like maybe like this. There's another piece of that book. There's some fabric that kind of, this little flower fabric that kind of reminds me of the curtains my Aunt Sylvie had. And then this little rosebud pattern, my mother had a handkerchief with this rosebud pattern on it. She had a blue one and a pink one. And so most of the things in here, not, you know, I won't really reveal everything, but most things in here are symbolic, and they are about pieces of the past. And so that's kind of what I mean by change. You know, things don't stay the same. They change. And we have to grow along with it, whether we like it, you know. Again, some more rusty things from my uncle. And this little flip up here reveals a sketch I did of a polyphemus cocoon. And then the last page has more. This is a story. This whole piece right here is a story, and that's about my grandmother. That is actually an armadillo scale. And so that piece is a story that makes me laugh and chuckle. And here's more of that old book and old book pages. And then in the very back, I've collaged, and I did a hand sketch of a butterfly and stamped some, just some wildflowers. And then there's the title of the book. And this butterfly, I think, is really interesting. If you look at its wings, gosh, I forgot the name of this butterfly. I'd have to go look it up because I think it's like in Africa or someplace like that. Anyway, when I did this butterfly, I did it, one side of the wings are the underside and one side are the upper side, so that when the butterfly folds itself up, it can disguise itself. But I thought both sides were equally beautiful, so I did one side that's hidden and one side that's exposed. And like I said, all these things have little endearments that are meant for me, or stories that are attached. And I just really, really loved this project. I will link that class below in case anyone is interested. And I wanted to thank Roxanne so much for the inspiration and the fun that I had making this little book. And I wanted to thank you for joining me, and I will see you around the studio.